Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. You guys feel that? Do you guys feel that pump right there? No, I am not talking about the pump you see in my arm. I am talking about this market pump that we are feeling right now in the comic book collecting hobby. And in this video, we got to check back in on the silver, bronze, and copper age index because we have the numbers for January. And I got to say, there's been a huge market pump. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel doing those things, I appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. I'm actually sweating. That was a real weight. Yeah, that is right. I don't use props here, but we got to jump into this. Now, of course, you guys know what this is. You guys know what this means. We're going to have to spend most of this video looking at lines, charts, and graphs. It's going to be a boring video. It's going to be very, very boring. It's going to be very, very dense, okay? But you're going to have to suck it up. This is very, very important stuff, okay? You're going to need to eat your vegetables. Did I go to a Comic-Con this past weekend? Yes, I did. Did I pick up cool books that I would rather be showing you right now? Yes, I would. But guess what? We're not going to get that content yet, okay? We got to do this. This is very important. This is the most important videos we make here on the channel, and therefore you're going to sit through it and look at a bunch of numbers. Now, I'm sure you guys all know what the comic book index is by now, but in case you don't, let me break it down for you. I take the top 100 sold books per age. We're talking about silver, bronze, and copper. I take the highest volume of graded book. That's the one I count. The final sale of each month, basically equating to the market close. I get all of these numbers from GPA data. I average them all together. We get the value of each index month by month. And let's kick it off right now with the silver age index. Of course, this is the chart that we had seen in the month of December to round out the year of 2022. If you guys remember that video, I was talking about how, in the history of this index, what we typically see in the month of December is an up month. And we did get, technically speaking, a little bit of an up month, but basically less than 1%. So not much of a lift overall. But where did we go in January of 2023? I had already been talking about it, in some of my previous videos where I was just feeling like there was enthusiasm in the market. And that's not to mention all of the boosts that we got from the DC books after the James Gunn stuff. Where did we move here in January? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me show you how much of a market pump we got. Bam! All the way up to 60,852. This is the highest the Silver Age Index has been since the summer of 2022, back all the way in July. We have absolutely blown it up here in 2023. Some of the previous times we've seen some of these big pumps is in November and December of 2021, and also in January and February of 2021 when we had the initial comic book boom. But I do think that there are some interesting correlations as to why we're getting this pump, and I will talk about those later on in the video. But let's move forward now to the Bronze Age Index and talk a little bit of what's going on with the data that we see here. Now, in December of 2022, we had finished off the year with 41,939. The Bronze Age didn't necessarily always show that December pump like the Silver Age did. We had a little bit of a pullback, just a couple of points from November to December. But now going into January, where were we going to be with the Bronze Age? As you guys know, the Bronze Age has been trending down for quite a bit of time. And did we get the same pump for the Bronze Age like we did with silver? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely got a pump. We got a pump of a whopping $1. I kid you not. The index has gone up by $1 single dollar, going from 41,939 to 41,940. But this is still a big deal for the Bronze Age. I mean, you have to go all the way back to February of 2022, where we had an actual up month for this index. That is right, for 10 months straight, this index has been going down month after month after month, which makes it really hard. I mean, if you're somebody out there who is thinking, oh, let me buy the dip, I'll just continue to buy the dip, I'll continue to buy the dip. Well, you've basically been buying the dip, 10 months straight. You've been losing out that equity. But here we are in January of 2023, and this is the very, very first time that the index has at least stabilized. But that is an interesting and promising sign for the bulls out there. Now, of course, there is always going to be the bear case, which I will get into later on in the video, but it does seem like, generally speaking, comic book buyers definitely came to play in this year of 2023, in this January market. And I think that has a lot to do with the sentiment that is out there. Now, the last index that we have to talk about is, of course, the Copper Age Index. This is an index I had most recently put together. Now, I do have to spend a little more time analyzing the numbers with this one and trying to figure it out, because what I don't see is the same type of year-over-year returns for Copper Age age books that I did see with bronze and silver age. So it's a little bit harder to figure out, how the model is going to play out with this thing. And it was my personal opinion that I think that this index has a lot more to come down still. I think that it is actually pretty overinflated if I'm looking back at how it had been moving in the middle and the end of 2020. And so I would have thought that here in January, we would have continued to see the index going down. But funny enough, that was not the case, because here in January of 2023, we also had an up month for the copper age index. In fact, the copper age index improved more than that of the bronze age index. I guess that doesn't really say much, since the bronze age index improved by only $1. But here we are with the three indexes, all of them having an up month here in January of 2023. And I think that has a lot to do mostly with market sentiment. I think comic book buyers are feeling a little bit more confident going into this year based on how things are playing out in the economy. And that's not to say that we're necessarily out of the woods. I don't necessarily think we're out of the woods, but even if we are going into this, recession or bear market, for the next, 6, 7, 12 months or whatever the case may be, it does seem like all the predictions so far have been accurate. What is the CPI data? Okay, month to month, it's going down, it's trending down. Okay, what is the Fed rate? Okay, he's going to raise it by 0.25 basis points. Anything that has been predicted has so far come true. And if there's anything that we know with, markets and commodities and things like that, so long as there is an understanding and stability of what the prices and the values and the things are going to be, that's going to give buyers a lot of confidence making their purchases. If there's uncertainty, that's when you really have a lot of fear out there. But for the time being, it does feel like comic book buyers are feeling pretty confident, which is definitely a good thing as we get into the sponsor of this video, Torpedo Comics. Now, for those who don't know, Torpedo Comics is one of the best comic book stores in the country. They are based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, but they have locations in the Southern California area as well. They also have this online store, torpedocomics.com, and they have all sorts of great products from Golden Age all the way through modern. They have amazing books available here on their site. They do mystery boxes, raw comics, CGC slabs, and trading cards if you're into that sort of thing. And what's great about the store is that they actually have this handy search feature, so I can find the books that I'm looking for with ease. We all know that I'm now looking for anything related to DC and James Gunn, so I can hit the DC Comics tab, scroll down right here, and buy anything that is related to what James Gunn said in his announcement. And the best part about torpedocomics.com is if you use my promo code SWAGGLEHOSS, which you'll see in the description, you'll be able to save 10% off on your order. So whether or not the market is going up or whether or not the market is going down, you're going in saving money. What's not to love about that? I want to say thank you to Torpedo Comics for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into the index. All right, let's kind of zoom in here to the graph and talk about some of the key takeaways here after we break down these numbers. Now, here in December of 2022, the silver age was sitting around that 49,986 range. Here in January, we jumped up to 60,852. That is an increase of 21%. One of the biggest increases we have seen in these last 2 years. But when we get into the key takeaways, we're going to talk about that number specifically and try to figure out what is going on there. Of course, with the Bronze Age, we went from December of 41,939 to January of 41,940, an increase of $1. That, my friends, is what we call a push. And then lastly, the Copper Age Index here, I just have the January numbers. That is 29,297, up from 28,217, which is basically a 4% increase, something we haven't seen for the Copper Age Index since May of 2022. Now, of course, the key takeaways here I want to focus on are for the silver books and the bronze books. 13% down for the Silver Age, 12% up for the Silver Age, which generally speaking to me seems pretty even overall. I mean, I think in any given month, you're going to see kind of equal up and equal down any given sale, any given day. But the big thing that changed in this particular month is the non-sale factor. We had a lot more sales accounted for in this particular month. I mean, last month it was basically at the 30% no sale range, which means, dealers and buyers were kind of looking at each other and nobody was, capitulating to the other person's cause. It does feel like a lot of the prices have finally come down. A lot of people are finally accepting that we can no longer get those 2021 prices. So we had a lot higher of volume. And that's really why you saw this big number here in the index. I think that that is a good sign moving forward because it does show that there is still a lot of demand out there in the market. But if the books aren't priced right and they're feeling like they're not going to be able to get a good deal, then buyers are simply not going to pull the trigger on any of those books. And it does feel like here in January, they finally did that. Bronze Age values here, 17% down, 14% up, 10% non-sale, very, very similar to what we saw last month, which is why the index basically only went up by $1. Now, if we go here by month, this will be something to keep our eye on as we go through this calendar year. I already started the 2023 line graph, which is kind of the teal cyan color. You can see right there. Currently where we sit, obviously the floor value is a little bit higher of what we saw in 2021 or the beginning of 2021. We are of course lower than that of 2022, and it'll be really interesting to see if we ever get any crossing patterns to the yellow line. That's the one I'm always interested in. Are we going to test those 2020 prices? You can see in December, that is when we really were getting close to it, right? The December month of 2022 was really close to the December month of 2020. We were definitely flirting with that crossing pattern there. And depending on how bearish or bullish you are, we're going to see if those lines end up crossing once again. Now, I wanted to kind of pull up this chart because I thought it was really interesting. Again, this is the one that I showed in the last index video where I was talking about, the psychology of the investor. Of course, I was talking about how clearly we had been in the capitulation phase, and maybe we were already hitting that despair phase. With this up month, does that mean that we are getting to that return to mean? I mean, if we're looking at the trend line here, the basic January Silver Age index would now be at the very high line of the trend line overall. The Bronze Age one would be kind of sitting, slightly below the middle trend line. So we're kind of still within the window, generally speaking, although Silver Age is a little bit hot. Is there going to be more despair to come? I mean, I'll let you guys answer that in the comments. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about the Fear and Greed Index and explain why I think the month of January has been such an up month. This is currently where the Fear and Greed Index sits for the month of February. Of course, the Fear and Greed Index is designed to show what the market is feeling, at any given moment. And here in February, you can see that the market is actually in the extreme greed side of the chart, which does bring a little bit of concern. It's that Warren Buffett quote, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. And I do think that if you rewind the clock a little bit, you can see some interesting tales as to why the market values are what they were. If you go back to November and December, where you see the red arrow right there, the Fear and Greed Index was already down around the 30 level or so, which means that it was in the fear side of the chart, which, that's one of the reasons why, people were not buying books. Nobody knew what was going to be happening with the market. Everyone was a little bit afraid to spend money. They were thinking this could be getting a lot worse. But, here in January, we got the CPI report. It was exactly what had been predicted, that inflation was going to be going down at a nominal percentage. And then we also got the announcement of the Fed interest rate hike, which was at 0.25%, which was what a lot of people had been predicting. And currently where we sit is a lot of people are thinking that we're going to get 2 more raises of 0.25, bringing us up to a 5% interest rate by the time we get to March. And I think that's really one of the big takeaways, if we're talking about the bears versus bulls and what people are feeling in the market. I think the bull case would be, so long as things are predictable, even if we end up going into a recession, even if we end up, still having a high interest rate at the 5% level, for the next 6 months, as long as there's that sort of stability in that bear market, I still think that that means buyers are going to have confidence. If you're somebody out there who's thinking like, you want to pick up a comic book, as long as you know that the price you pay today is generally speaking going to be around the same price you would pay, 3 months from now or 4 months from now, then you're going to make that purchase. That's really all people care about. They just want to know that this book isn't going to crash a couple months later. And I think with some of the consistency that we're seeing in the macro economy, at least in terms of the predictions of where we are going, that's been giving consumers a lot of confidence as they make their purchases. Now, again, the bear case might be that we still have, unemployment pretty low overall. The Fed wants to get that up by another % or so, and that could have, an effect on the macro economy, which could trickle over to what comic book buyers are doing. Do people have to liquidate because they got fired from their job? Or do people, not have the money to spend because they are no longer employed? I don't really know if there's going to be so much correlation. Obviously, it will have an effect to some degree, but, again, it's really, really hard to say how much of the 100 top books in each of these indexes are going to be affected by those macroeconomic factors. Like I've already said in some of the videos I had before, certainly there's going to be people who have to go into the LCS and liquefy their collection because they need cash to, buy eggs and things like that. And by all means, they should absolutely do that. But that's not necessarily going to be reflective of what the sales prices of, what we see on heritage auctions, which is what's defining, the numbers we see here in the, charts that I'm showing you guys. So it's really hard to say if those case-by-case scenarios of people that have to liquefy their collections are going to be reflected in what's actually happening here in the key books and the key issues of the charts that we're talking about. But again, who really knows from here? I mean, my overall sentiment or my overall feeling is that this is, a little bit of a dead cat bounce. I do think that people went into 2023, a little bit bullish overall, and a lot of these sales I expect in the next couple months to come back down. I think we should probably pull back down for the silver age another 5, maybe 6% or so. I do think that where it currently sits is probably a little bit too high. But again, this has been the trend, generally speaking, for the market. We always start the year off strong. December is the up month, and that leads into the next year. And then we start to get things like, the Ant-Man movie, and then we start to get into the summer and spring, and people really like to buy comic books because that's the other thing too. Comic books seem to be very, very seasonal, as does real estate. There's a lot of comparisons you can make between, commodity purchases of comic books and things like real estate. So, again, who really knows where we go from here? Nobody really knows. There's definitely cases for the bears. There's definitely cases for the bulls. It's my personal opinion that I would still like to see consistency of value index for at least the next 3 to 4 months before I say go 100% all in. I definitely think that, when we get to the next bull cycle where, things are going up, month after month after month, that's still going to be a ways away. I think we're mostly going to be sideways for the most part in this year. But, when the Fed pivots, which, a lot of people are thinking it could be at the end of this year. I know you guys in the comics don't think so, but it also could be at the top of 2024. I do think at the top of 2024 at the latest, there will be a Fed pivot, and that will ultimately lead to the next bull run, which then leads into things like Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And by that point, we'll also have the Superman James Gunn film. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was the market update for January of 2023. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about the index? Did you guys buy any books in January? What do you think about this market pump? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.